feed switcher. Okay, test, 1, 2. And it is on like a 15-second delay, it seems like. Oh, I sound good now? Okay. This is just a microphone. So I've got it, it's like 6 inches from my mouth. Yeah, let me, now that I'm in this Epiphone, I'm gonna poke around in here and see if I can find any audio levels that I can kick up. But we'll try it tonight, and we should have good info from there. And I'll make sure Anna has the mics like individually kicked up if people sound kind of quiet. She usually has headphones on. So yeah, if you want to text me, I usually have my computer up on the side. I'll be actually in the meeting, and I'm presenting on metal detectors or something. But yeah, if you just want to give me a text and let me know, I can have Anna is sitting literally 3 feet right behind me, so I can have her kick stuff up and down. All right. And by 7, you mean probably 7:30, or our meeting doesn't start till 7:30 for some strange reason. Oh, I get what you're saying. All right, yeah, as soon as she gets here, we'll get stuff set up. And I don't know, I'll ask her about the YouTube dates. Also, Catherine, I didn't ask her specifically what was up, but Catherine said the dates were all wonky in there as well. So, but there's one with the 15th. No, there's nothing on the 15th. That was a Saturday? There was a meeting on the 4th. Yeah, I think that's what Catherine was saying, and we can do that if you want us to. And we'll get you accurate dates going forward as well. Test, test, 1, 2, test. This is John Gutzmer at the Urbana board meeting. Test, test, 1, 2. Test, test. I am the very model of a modern major general of information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the fights historical, from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. I am very well acquainted too with matters mathematical. I understand equations both simple and quadratical. About binomial theorem, I'm teeming with a lot of news, with many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. I'm very good at integral and differential calculus. I know the scientific names of beings and immaculus. In short matters, animal, vegetable, and mineral. I am the very modern of a model major general. Past the spot it normally is. Test, 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 test. I don't think that matters.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Test, test. Test, test. All right, there's nothing on that one. Is it just on input 6? Test, test. Test, test. No, I unlocked it. Test, test.
Why are all the cameras skewed?
What do you mean?
Like, go back to 8. Normally the picture is just from here to here, but all of a sudden it's like way over.
I started broadcasting to YouTube so we could check it.
Oh, because this is way off now.
What do you mean? Oh,
Like this shouldn't, you shouldn't be able to see me at all. It should just be like from there to there, and it's a little bit tighter focus. But
and then test, test. Oh, test, test. Test, test. I'm going to just crank these all up. Is there any reason not to?
I think, I mean, no, I mean, I can't think of any reason. I don't think it's gonna make a difference either, but I can't think of any reason.
Test, test, test. Test, 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 test. Huh.
And we're sure it's on our end, not their end.
Test, test.
Whatever problem it is.
Test, test, test. Be on headphones. Test, test. 1, 2, 3. Test. Test, test. 1, 2. Test, 1, 2.
adorable. Test. Test, test, test. He asked me to do a couple more because he wanted to hear it where he was at, and so I did it. And let's see what he says. I mean, and the thing is, like, this is also optimal because most people talk like this during the meeting. Way over here, and the mic is way over here. It doesn't really matter. His phrasing is pretty good, definitely audible. That's what we're going for.
hour 7:30 has arrived. It is Tuesday, January 18th. Start of our January business meeting agenda. Roll call, please.
Member Orr,
Here.
Member Obalski,
Here.
Member Hall,
Here.
Member Carter is here, Vice President Exum,
Here.
and President Pulaski.
Here, are there any additions, corrections, or modifications to tonight's agenda? Here none. So we're moving into citizen statements. We received two over our email address, so I'll read those off first. The first is from Michael Weissman. USD 116 is considering increased administrative spending and spending on metal detectors. A much more beneficial small expense would be to buy some box fans and MERV 13 filters to make purifiers to remove airborne virus from the air the staff and students are breathing. These inexpensive filters have been shown to be extremely effective. Students could help put them together, a process that takes only minutes. In the process, they could learn about airflow, viral spread, etc. That would be a great way to integrate activity and learning on a really important topic. Instructions for putting together excellent air purifiers for about $50 each can be found on many sites, for example, edgecollective.io/airbox. Replacement of the HEP filters costs roughly $30 every 6 months. Seriously, this is something that USD 116 can do in every classroom that's protective, cheap, and intrinsically educational. It's not scientifically or politically controversial. Let's do it. Now, the second is from Katie Schroeder. To whom it may concern, thank you for your service to our community and this platform to share my thoughts. I urge you to please consider the long-term effects of what the decisions you are making today create. Last year had a disastrous effect on our kids' overall learning, social growth, and mental health. I make this statement based on the short-term effects I have personally witnessed. We don't even know what the long-term effects will be. Keeping them in school is vital to maintaining what bit of normalcy and routine we have been able to establish this school year. I had the unique experience of having one child in person, private school, and one child remote, public school, for the entire school year last year. The differences in learning and their outlook of school is tremendous. I applaud our district and school-level administrators for implementing policies and resources to allow school to be in person safely thus far. The testing site at UHS, UMS is a great example. We need to rely on the framework that has been laid to continue moving forward. Please maintain an in-person school option. Respectfully, Katie Schroeder. We have also received one in-person request for public participation tonight from Joseph Edwards. Just hit the button on the front to turn it green, and yes,
Do
yeah,
I have to hold it, or okay, cool. Hey, my name is Joe Edwards. My daughter is a student in Leal School in Miss LaDonna Helm's classroom. She shares that classroom with 26 other students, bringing the total number of people in that room to 28. That is nearly 50% higher than the other two first-grade classrooms at Leal School. I understand that as the only monolingual line instructor at Leal School, it sort of restricts the options for kind of redistributing that load. But I would like to emphasize that this is an issue that does require immediate attention. Last week, I had an email conversation with Dr. Ivory Tatum, where she effectively said there wasn't much that could be done to lower the class sizes for first graders. The day after that email, there was a positive test in Miss Helm's classroom. So far, 2022 has brought a record number of positive tests, particularly in children under the age of 10. And with the return of undergraduates to UIUC's campus, that number is only sure to continue to rise. I just want to ask, is that really all you can do? Are your options really that limited for redistributing fair, equitable, and safe class sizes to 6-year-olds in Leal School, and I assume the other classes that have, language exclusive requirements across the district? And if it is, what are we going to do when this gets worse? What happens if my daughter's teacher tests positive? Are all of her classmates going to have to go online while other students get to remain in person? Are we going to have a disruption of class where we bring in a substitute? what is the alternative here if we don't do something to maintain a fair, safe, and equitable distribution of risk among these children? Is that really all we can do? Thank you.
Thank you very much. If anyone else wishes to address the board in public tonight, please fill out a goldenrod form and hand it to our recording secretary, Lori Johnson. Anyone else tonight? No? Well, thank you very much. There is no call for an executive session after tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hull?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Member Hasanadka?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. I apologize for that.
Motion passes. First up tonight, we actually have a wonderful commendation to announce. Carrie Surratt, the second grade teacher at Thomas Paine Elementary School, achieved National Board Certified Teacher status. It takes many hours of training and extra work on top of what's already a tough job to do this. So we're exceedingly appreciative of her efforts to bring this professional development to us. So, thank you. There are no communications or student ambassador report.
I think Parker is sharing our report tonight.
I think both of us have something
Oh,
to say, but
wonderful,
I'll go
thank you.
first. This week, some highlights in sporting events at Urbana High School include a girls basketball varsity and JV game tonight in Rantoul. Thursday, there will be a home boys meet held at the Aquatic Center. On Friday, the boys varsity and JV teams both have their conference game at Normal West High School held in Normal West High School. On Saturday, there will be the boys wrestling Big 12 conference held in Peoria, and girls basketball varsity and JV games held at and against Centennial High School. In other UHS sports news, the track team officially started practicing this week and looks forward to a great season. In other UHS news, another area in the hallway right outside the Commons area was set up for high schoolers to eat at during lunch following concerns of too many students being in the Commons at the same time. This has allowed for more space and less kids to be in the Commons area, which has made me and many other UHS students feel much safer while eating lunch. Lastly, Michael, Ashley, and I are putting together a survey asking the students different questions about the food served in the cafeteria at Urbana High School, primarily asking whether or not they like the food. We decided on this as one issue in UHS that we would like to take care of in a meeting with Principal Nance following many concerns and complaints about the food from our peers. Thank you.
And I do want to add that the other day I did attend a volleyball game, and if you haven't had the popcorn, it's very good. But I did notice that the padding on the north wall is not up to par, and it's not really giving a good look for our visitors. So if there's anything we could possibly do to maybe fix it, like maybe tape it or something, then we should try to do something about that.
Thank you, Michael.
So thank you, Parker, Michael. Very appreciative of having you guys here. First up is administrative report tonight, our COVID-19 update.
Great, thank you. So, Amy Marks, our district nurse, is joining me. You can see her in the Zoom. All right, hi, Amy. I don't know if you guys have all met Amy, but she is fantastic, and she is doing a lot to hold our nurses together. So I just wanted to publicly recognize all of your hard work, Amy. I know it is a lot, and you have been very flexible and, you know, kind of right by our side as administrators, but also supporting our building principals and teachers, and just doing a little bit of everything. So thank you for everything that you're doing. So Amy and I are going to provide an update. We've received a lot of questions about the recent public health guidance. As we all know, as school folks, we have had to be very flexible since this has all started. And guidance changes from week to week, and we just ask people to be patient with us to give us time to put in the procedures and systems in place to follow the guidance and the protocols as they come to us. So today we're going to highlight, thank you, John, highlight just a few areas. Some will answer some questions I know that we've received from the public and from staff, and give a few updates at the very end. So we're going to talk a little bit about the new guidance relating to close contacts, the mandatory exclusions for days 5 and 10. Test to stay has been something we've heard a lot of questions about. Outbreak testing, which we've been doing for quite some time, so that isn't new to us. Maybe new to some districts. Adaptive pause, you know, what is an adaptive pause? What does that mean? And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the other mitigation strategies that we've been putting in place. Okay, so updated guidance. Whoops, I think I clicked one too many times. So we've been trying to keep our public up to date on the recent changes. So first, the CDC issued new isolation and quarantine guidance, which shortened the isolation and quarantine periods for the general public. That happened on January 4th. And then, as a school district, we were anxiously waiting for additional information from the Illinois Department of Public Health, which we received. But then we had not received anything from ISBE, our State Board of Education. So that came last week. I know families were waiting, anticipating how the district was going to implement the shortened quarantine and isolation period, but with absence of guidance from the state board, we really couldn't move forward with that. So now we are moving forward. We have been meeting with principals, our nurses. I shared quite a bit of I shared all the guidance in the State Board of Education's updated protocols. In the update, Catherine, our Director of Marketing, will have those documents all available in the board update tomorrow, so everybody will be able to see those at least once more. So this guidance that we're going to talk about tonight is a combination of CDC, Illinois Department of Public Health, IDPH, Illinois State Board of Education, ISBE, that for all of our schools that we're required to implement. So first, there is a new definition of a close contact. So right now, the new guidance is determining that a close contact means an individual who was within 6 feet of a confirmed or probable case for a cumulative total of 15 minutes or more in a 24-hour period. The change is not so much the definition, but how we are to move forward with excluding and interacting with the close contacts. So a close contact now is not a student who was in 3 to 6 feet in a classroom setting for at least 15 minutes. That's what it kind of was before. With a confirmed or probable student, if both case and student were consistently masked for the entire exposure period. So that also means students aged 18 years and older who have received all their vaccines and boosters are not considered close contacts. A student aged 5 through 17 who completed the first and second series of the COVID-19, they are not considered close contacts. An individual on a school bus or transportation within 3 to 6 feet if both the confirmed case and the exposed individual were consistently and correctly masked during the entire bus ride, and an individual who tested positive for COVID-19 in the past 90 days from the date of exposure. This last bullet also has some changes associated with it. Previously, if you tested positive within a 90-day period, you did not have to continue to test. If you could, in most cases, people were continuing to test positive for a while. But this definition has changed a little bit. If a person is symptomatic and test positive again within their 90-day window, then public health is going to treat them as a new positive case, and they will have to quarantine again. So some changes here. We have been looking at close contacts in a very different way on the bus and in the classroom setting. So this has changed pretty significantly. I think one of the reasons it has changed is IDPH and ISB expect us to now test to stay more than we were before. We were already doing quite a bit of test to stay, but now districts are going to be required to offer test to stay to keep students learning in person as much as possible is the goal. And this is a lot of really heavy content, so as I'm going, if you have questions, stop me in kind of when we're talking about it, or we can do it at the end, either way. You can stop me as we go, or we can have questions at the end too.
I have a question.
Sure.
On that last slide,
Yep.
and the right side, are those exceptions to close contact?
Those are close contacts are not those things, yes.
So if you are ages 5 to 17 and you receive 2 COVID vaccines, then you can never be considered a close contact.
You're considered fully vaccinated if you're 5 to
Yes.
17.
What I'm saying is you will never be considered a close contact.
Yes, that is true. Unless
I would say,
go ahead, Amy.
too, I
was
would
just
say
gonna
at
it.
this point, because it may change, they may change that guidance and start recommending the boosters for
Yeah.
that age group.
It may change, but as of now, from guidance, if you're ages 5 to 17 and receive 2 vaccines, you will never be considered a close contact. And if you're 18 and above and receive both vaccines and a booster, you will never be considered a close contact.
If you were consistently masked for the time that you were, if you were properly masking when you were exposed, then yes, that is correct. The other area where it might be an exception we'll talk about here in a few minutes is household exposures. Those are for school exposures. But in the home, if you have siblings that are testing positive, if the family members are not isolating away from one another, then that might also trigger being a close contact. Did that answer your question, Ravi? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So next is the exclusion. So I think this is where we're getting a lot of questions about the shortened going from the 5 days to 10 days. People have a lot of questions about this because it isn't what we've been doing up until this point. So the new guidance is if you test positive for COVID, everyone, regardless of vaccination status, must do the following. So previously, if you were fully vaccinated, the rules were, you had one set of rules. If you're unvaccinated, there were a different set of rules. So as of right now, like Amy said, this can change at any moment. Regardless of vaccination status, this is what students and staff are expected to do. So stay home for a minimum of 5 days and a maximum of 10 days after the first day of symptoms or the date of the positive test for asymptomatic persons. Continue wearing a mask around others for 5 more days after returning to school. So we'll talk about this in more detail, but basically what this means is anyone who tests positive, they have to stay home for at least 5 days. They could stay home for 10 days if they're exhibiting any symptoms at all. If they return early, they have to continue wearing a mask around others for the 5 days, for days 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Individuals may return to school after 5 days if they're asymptomatic first, if they're fever-free without fever-reducing medicine for 24 hours, if they're not showing any signs of diarrhea, vomiting for the past 24 hours, and their symptoms have to be greatly improved. How are we going to determine this information? You are probably asking. So our nurses do a fantastic job of reaching out to families, making phone calls. We've created a student health screening form and a staff health screening form. So we're piloting the form this week at UHS. We wanted to start it just because every time we start something like this, we do feel like we need to tweak our system a little bit. So we're starting that form at the high school. So students will receive, at the high school will be students and parents. Below high school level, it will basically be parents. And we'll be asking parents and students to complete when did they first develop their symptoms, When did their symptoms end? We're asking them to certify that they're symptom-free before they come back. We're also making sure it is very clear to family members and to students that if you return to school before the maximum of the 10-day period, that you understand that you have to wear your mask, you're going to have to eat in a special lunch space. And we wanted that to be very clear because there's some families who may say, no, we choose to stay home for our full 10 days. And others, if their students are asymptomatic and feeling fine, then they will say, yes, we'll agree to those stipulations and rules, and we like to come back early. So this is going to require a lot of back and forth home to school communication. That'll happen primarily through our nurses. I know our principals have been making a lot of phone calls as well, just getting an idea of where people are with their symptoms. We are going to all, like we've been saying from the very beginning, we're in this together. We have to trust one another. And so when a family member or a student fills out that form and says, hey, I'm feeling great, I would like to come back to school, we're going to have to trust that that is the case. However, if that student comes back to school and it's day 6, 7, and they're still coughing and sneezing and showing COVID-like symptoms, then we will be asking the family to keep that student at home for the full 10 days. Okay? So the
I have a
next
question about the slide as well.
Sure.
So just a comment on the phrase continue to wear a mask. I would just hope everybody's always wearing a mask. But then the question is, in that email from last Friday, there was some words about a school provided KN95 for the symptomatic people between days 6 and 10 if they come back asymptomatic, I guess, at that point.
Yes.
So is that the case or is that changed?
No, that is the case. I haven't gotten to that slide yet. But yes, our order of those came in today. So, Randy, were those delivered to schools? Yes. So schools receive those, and those are for staff and students to wear. That is part of what I was referring to in the survey. Ravi, it specifically says that the student will wear their KN95 mask for the 5 days that they're back early. We bought masks that are, you can't wear them forever. So the ones that we purchased are good for them to wear for the 5 days.
Can I add a little bit to that?
Yes.
So Ravi, there are families that teachers know the students aren't great maskers for whatever reason, and these students don't qualify, they won't qualify to come back early. So it's not just across the board that they can come back early. We're trying to be very thoughtful as to, who fits the mark for being able to properly mask. And then when they do come back, if they aren't properly masking, then we'll re-ask them to quarantine out, because we're trying hard to, stick to it all.
Yes, and that is actually on the form. Parents will be notified of that the school does have the authority to say, sorry, your student has not been wearing a mask all year long, and we don't feel strongly that they're going to wear their mask for the 5 days that they're coming back early. So I know that will cause some tension or stress among some family members, but again, I would just ask our public and our parents to have that conversation again with your child about how important mask wearing is, especially when they are within this 6, 7, 8, 9 day time period. So if you have COVID-like symptoms, another exclusion is everyone, regardless of vaccination status, must be excluded until we're able to at least provide a negative test and confirm the symptoms are not COVID. Luckily for us, because we do such a significant amount of testing in the district, we usually try to test students before we send them home to rule out COVID right there on the spot. For a minimum of 5 days and a maximum of 10 days until fever-free without fever-reducing medicine, kind of the same as before. If you were exposed to someone with COVID-19 and have no COVID-19-like symptoms, the following people are close contacts and they must be excluded. Students and staff who are not fully vaccinated, and that means completed the primary series, and we do have quite a few students who are not fully vaccinated, as well as staff members, a few. Students and staff 18 years and older who have received primary COVID-19 but not the booster. They're considered not fully vaccinated anymore based on the new guidance. If you were exposed to someone with COVID-19 and no COVID-19-like symptoms as an alternative to exclusion for the individuals who are close contacts, schools may permit close contacts without symptoms only, that's why I bolded that, who were exposed in the school setting, so this doesn't apply to home, during the school day to participate in what we call test to stay. So test to stay, we have been offering test to stay since the very beginning of the school year. We have been providing that on day 1, 3, 5, and 7, which was a lot of work for us to keep up with, but we've been doing it. Now the test to stay guidance is a little different. It is days twice. It is very similar to outbreak testing, where you have to test twice a week for 2 weeks. And again, in order to qualify for this this right to stay in school without symptoms, individuals again must continue to wear a mask around others for the 5 days when they return to school, as we mentioned before.
Could you clarify the test being used for the test to stay? Is that a PCR test or is that a rapid test?
So we're using our rapid tests for that. The PCR tests, we don't get those back immediately. We do often encourage families, if we do a rapid test and we're very concerned that someone is showing symptoms and they test negative, we still encourage families to go get a PCR. But that is the rapid test.
For UMS and UHS, we are integrating more of the shield testing, which is the saliva test. It's just not as available for the younger kids quite yet.
Continuing on with that same exposure, someone with COVID-19, whoop, I didn't flip my slide there. If you're exposed and have no symptoms, individuals without symptoms and who are not participating in test to stay must stay home. So the guidance is really clear. If there's an outbreak, if you've been exposed, in order to stay in school, which is what is our goal, and of course the ISB guidance is pretty clear that is their goal as well, they have to participate in testing. But there are families who have said no, they don't want to do that. So if they choose not to, then those students stay home for 5 days. They wear a mask around others when they come back. Should they test for COVID-19 on day 5, those testing positive would be excluded for the full 10 days and follow the guidance of someone testing positive.
Can I just make a comment
Sure.
about the last series of question comment from member Orr? And that is, community shield testing is actually available for ages 5 and above now. So, you know, you won't have the result 15 minutes later for a test to stay option, but you know, you can do 5 and above now. So
Yes.
I just throw that out there.
Thank you for that. The Binex and the Rapid is so much easier for our students. I mean, we go in and test hundreds of students in a short amount of time, and they're masterful at it at this point. We do see when even our middle school and high school students struggle with the saliva, with the shield saliva, and adults aren't particularly fans of it. This morning we had to pivot to shield testing. We'll talk about that in a few minutes because we're running low on our rapid test supply. And we have had some adults who they much more prefer the rapid test than the saliva testing. So there definitely would be a lot of training and working with the littles to get them up to speed on that. I'm not saying it's not something that couldn't be done, but definitely would require a little more training, not so much setup, but more so just working with the younger kids to get them used to that.
And if I could add real quickly, right now the disruption to the learning day, as we're doing at least the surveillance testing, we can test about 20, 30 kids in a classroom. It takes 1 or 2 minutes. The PCR saliva testing would be a substantial disruption to the learning day as us coming through. So.
I think it was more just a comment on making sure that we felt like the reliability. So like just knowing that the PCR test is more reliable, and just making sure that I know that the rapid offers a lot of benefits for being easier, just kind of making sure that we're aware though that it isn't always providing accurate results, right? So that was the only reason I was making sure we understood the difference.
And just to piggyback on what you just said, we have given thousands of rapid tests since the beginning of the year. We hardly ever have false positives. So when we tell someone they're positive, it is always confirmed on the PCR that they're positive. The only time we have instances where we have maybe a negative when someone is positive, it depends on when they are taking the rapid test in their viral load cycle. So what we've been seeing with Omicron is people are displaying symptoms, and they come and get a test and they test negative because they're very early in their symptoms. And then they may come back the very next day and test, and then now they're positive. So that is one time when I think the PCR has been picking up the Omicron faster. But when we send someone out for a positive test, they're always positive. And that is one good thing I can say about using the Binax Now test that we've been using. So just to highlight a couple key points here, just to summarize, I know I shared a lot, but I think the biggest takeaways is the information that I included in the update. So I think the most important thing that people need to remember is after the 5 days, for those who test positive, they can return if they continue to wear a well-fitted mask around others for 5 additional days after the release. If they're unable to wear a mask, which we talked about, I just want to highlight it again, the student or staff member will be asked to continue to isolate for the full total 10 days. We are going to exercise our authority as administrators and decision makers. If we feel that students are not going to be responsible with masking during these 5 days, we have already had students stay home and do the full 10 days. I just wanted to reiterate that. We have had some questions about students and staff members who are immunocompromised. Administrators are working through those situations individually, one-on-one. If we have a teacher who is immunocompromised and a student is allowed to return, principals are doing things like having that student be in a different classroom on days 6 through 10. Or in some situations, maybe the students stay out the full 10 days. At the middle school and high school, they're going to do things like have that student go to the library, go to a different period, if it's 7th period and the teacher there is immunocompromised, they don't go in the classroom. Maybe they go into a different area in the building for 7th hour instead of being with that teacher for those 5 days. We've been having a lot of discussions about lunch. I mentioned this at our last meeting. Our student ambassadors have talked about lunch at the high school. So if masks need to be removed in our situation, as Robbie pointed out, the only time that would be happening would be during lunch. We are ensuring that 6 feet of physical distancing until 10 days after the symptom onset or a positive test. So our schools have designated lunch spaces for students. We have created new spaces. A couple of the buildings have basically reorganized their whole lunch eating areas to accommodate this. So we're really taking this very seriously in regard to the eating and having to have the mask down. And as we already talked about, we are expecting, it isn't a choice. It is an expectation that if students and staff members return on day 6 through 10, they will wear the KN95 mask. On day 11, when they get that release, like, yay, you're done, officially, they can choose to go back to whatever mask they prefer. But on days 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, we are asking them to wear the mask that they are being provided by the district. And I think this basically says the same thing. We have just really been reiterating it because I've gotten so many questions. So students may resume all activities as long as they remain asymptomatic and masked at all times. This includes lunch periods, extracurriculars, and on the bus. Schools are tracking who can return and when. I already mentioned the health screening form. I already talked about the mask and the lunch spaces. So household exposure. So this is one area we had a lot of questions ourselves. Our nurses did. I know Amy has talked to our contacts at Public Health about this, and it is in the ISBE guidance for household exposures. So remember, this is not people who were exposed at school. These are positive cases that are happening in someone's home or in their family. The nurses will talk to family members, determine the extent of the quarantine and isolation that is needed. The two key points here, or the main point, is if the student or the family member in the household is isolating, then the sibling can return to school on day 11. So we have, is not isolating, they have to stay out the full 10 days is what that first bullet means. So we have been, there have been some really strict rules about household exposures. We have had some students who have been out for 15, 20 days because they had a sibling who was positive, and then another sibling tested positive, and so everyone basically, your timeline kind of started over. So the guidance has changed in that if someone in the home tests positive, if that person in the home is isolating, then it does trigger the, you can come back early or you have to stay out the whole 10 days. So bullet 1 is the siblings are not isolating away from one another, so the students have to stay out until day 11. If the family is isolating the student, then the siblings can return on day 6, provided they mask at all times, socially distance at lunch. So test to stay. I've kind of talked about test to stay a little bit, but for close contacts identified within the school setting, remember this is all about what happens in school and what we can control. Well, we can't control any of it, but what we can contact trace in school during the school day. Test to stay is a preferred method because it keeps our children in school, and it includes testing that will identify new positives quickly. So students and staff that quarantine or isolate for 5 days do not have to participate in test to stay. Students and staff deemed close contacts but do not have to quarantine will need to test to stay in school twice a week within a 7-day period in order to be able to remain in school. This actually went into effect with the new guidance. However, we're not starting test to stay until next week because it will take a significant amount of testing on our part. And we are, Brenda brought this up at our last meeting, we have been experiencing some testing delay, receiving our testing kits, our supplies have been delayed. So this week, we have kind of paused our surveillance testing, and we are reserving our tests for symptomatic students and staff, and some other areas, outbreak testing. So we're not going to start this more heavily in time-intensive and test-intensive test-to-stay model until next week. And just an update about that, we did receive a shipping notification, so our tests will be here this week. They may be here tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, hopefully Thursday. So, outbreak testing. What is outbreak testing? So people have heard us use this phrase, I'm sure, throughout the school year because we've been doing outbreak testing all year. So IDPH identifies an outbreak as 3 cases within a specified core group Basically, we have been testing like some of our student athlete teams. We might test a whole grade level. We might test a specific classroom or a club. If there, or we've had to do some after-school testing. So if there is a core group of students and those students are together for a certain amount of time, and we have 3 positive cases within that group, then we determine that to be an outbreak. We report that to public health, and then we begin the 14-day calendar of testing that group. So what this looks like in school is, and again, the students deal with this like, it sounds like it's an outbreak and everybody's, you know, really worried about it, or it causes a lot of anxiety, and it really doesn't. We go to the school, we're informed that we've had 3 positives. Many times, outbreak testing is triggered through our own testing that we do in the building. When we have, you know, in some buildings we test 200-300 kids, and to get 3 positives is pretty typical. To get 3 positives in one class is not. So when that happens, we right away start identifying the close contacts from the teacher. We determine who's vaccinated, who isn't, who needs to go home, who can stay in school. We call the parents of any of the students remaining in the class, and the first thing we do is make sure we have consent. At this point in the year, we have consent to test most kids, but not all kids. So the students that we don't have consent to test, we make sure we call the parent right away and make sure they know that there was an outbreak in the classroom. We have been told, and we have exercised this right to refusal in number 3 with CUPHD. We have had to tell some families that if you're not willing to participate in outbreak testing, which is testing twice a week for 2 weeks, then your kid has to stay home. And that is a pretty hard, fast rule for us, so we take it pretty seriously. The testing team puts together a schedule, and then they go out to the school twice a week to test those groups. Adaptive pause. So we have also received some questions about when will we pause in-person learning, and what does that mean? So from IDPH, decisions for temporary closure of school are these are not decisions that I am going to be making in a silo or in a vacuum by myself. Even the adaptive pause that we just ended at Urbana Middle School, even though that wasn't due to positive cases, it was more so for staffing shortages. CUPHD was looped in and part of those conversations from the very beginning. So again, we would be having conversations with our local health officials. They're aware of our numbers. And so we have collaborative conversations when we feel like we're getting to a point where we may have to pause a school. When the numbers of new cases make it difficult for the school and the health department to properly investigate close contacts, to contact trace. If it's an unsafe environment due to lack of masking and or testing, adaptive pauses can be useful to ensure individuals who are potentially infectious are excluded from school. So there have been a lot of adaptive pauses in our area, I guess, regionally. I know a couple of our neighboring districts have had to do this at their high school levels mostly, and taken, you know, a big, I can think of, for example, one of our neighboring districts after homecoming in the fall had to have their high school go on an adaptive pause due to how rapidly the cases kind of went through the high school after their big homecoming events. So we have seen this play out in our community a little bit, not in Urbana, but in cities around us. So per ISB language and IDPH, and I put this in here just to emphasize the importance of in-person learning. So throughout all of the guidance that we were shared, the focus is on how critical the role of in-person learning is to our students' overall well-being. In general, an adaptive pause should not be necessary if the school is following appropriate mitigation strategies, which we feel like we're doing the very best we can in doing that. Adaptive pause should not be necessary to mitigate an outbreak. We're doing that through testing. And students are best served by continuing to provide in-person learning. So doing things like masking, testing, identifying, excluding positive cases and close contacts. So we're doing those things. That doesn't mean there may not come a time at some point in the year where we have to do a pause because of positive cases. But right now, with the significant amount of testing that we do, that has really, I think, mitigated our need to have any of these adaptive pauses. So one thing that IDPH and ISB did provide in the guidance, which was new, were some options that we can work with our health department on if we see that we're getting to the point of needing to institute an adaptive pause that are less drastic than closing school and shifting to complete remote learning. So transitioning the classroom or the grade level where the outbreak occurred to remote learning, we've done this in very small pockets. So at the elementary level, for example, we had a classroom with 3 positive cases. We did some outbreak testing and we saw, still had another positive case and another positive case. So that particular class, we actually shifted them to remote learning for a week to just give everybody time to be home and make sure we didn't have any more positive cases and that we didn't have any more spread outside of that classroom. Suspending classes or closing playgrounds, canceling non-essential activities and meetings. These are not things that we've done. These are things that ISB offered as options for districts. Keeping students in constant class groups or classrooms and moving the teachers instead of the students. That is a model that we implemented quite a bit last year at the middle school, where the students stayed kind of in one place and the teachers moved. We haven't been doing that yet, but that is something that we could do if we needed to. Increasing space between students and classrooms, shortening the school week, staggering the start of lunch breaks. I heard a couple of our districts to the west of us shifted their high school schedule basically, and they're releasing their students before lunch because they could not figure out a way to keep the students separated and within that 6 feet during lunchtime. So to avoid that, and they're 2 pretty big high schools, they changed the school day and adjusted their schedules so students take their lunch home and lunch is not provided at school anymore. That's something we could do. That isn't something that we're doing yet. Update on testing. So I've already talked a little bit about our test availability here coming up, but John was going to give us a little update on where we are with testing.
Yep, so this was just kind of a overview of what's been going on the last couple weeks, and then this week we had some changes, and then what we're planning for the next couple weeks. So very exciting. Prior to this week, we had a couple of our biggest weeks yet of testing, 2 weeks of over 1,800 tests. We were able to add Wiley and Thomas Paine, and very quickly got a lot of consents in. Usually they start trickling in at 40, 50, 70, 80. They were both over 120 on the first week coming into testing. So great numbers from Wiley and Thomas Paine. This week, as Dr. Ivory Tatum mentioned, we had limited test supplies, so we were able to kind of pivot. We transitioned our morning staff testing to Shield, and we're able to keep that program going even with the lack of test supplies, which has been great. And then our biggest use of tests, as we were mentioning earlier, is the surveillance testing. So we had a 1-week hiatus on the elementary testing. Those tests should be back in, and we should be able to start that program again next week in earnest. And then we've always kind of kept a reserve of tests So even if we don't receive a shipment or we are running short on supplies, that we're still able to focus the sharp tip of the testing spear on the symptomatic and quarantine classes where it really makes the most impact on students. As Dr. Ivory Tatum also mentioned, we implemented an updated tracking system this week. Today was the first day that really streamlines how staff is able to enter students, identify close contacts, and identify the return date. It auto pulls information from our student information system to pre-populate guardian contacts. And then it also gives them kind of a summary of who's excluded for the 5 days, who's available to return for the 6 to 10 day window, and then who's been cleared on the 11th day. So next week, we look forward to returning to full testing. And it looks like I wrote this earlier before we got the notification that our supplies would ship, but it looks like that they will be in house at that time. And then we also look forward to implementing the full K-12 test to stay to allow students some more options.
Thanks, John. Angie was going to give us just a little update on the data dashboard. I know we still pretty routinely get questions about the dashboard, so we thought this would just be one more chance that we get to kind of do a little show and tell of the dashboard.
Yeah, and so I don't even know if everybody knows about the data dashboard, so I wanted to, again, talk about how useful it can be just to kind of get a pulse on what's going on in every school across the district, and then you can compare it to other schools to see, you know, kind of how Urbana compares. And so I just wrote that staff and families are encouraged to bookmark the USD 116 COVID-19 data dashboard. While schools are alerting families of positive cases, the administrators and teachers notify a little differently per their preference. And so some are notifying of positive cases via Skylert, some are notifying via Remind 101 text messages, class tag, phone calls, if they want to be able to catch somebody if they find out after the students leave. And so something that's always available to you is to be able to look at the dashboard. It's updated, depends on the situation. Sometimes it's updated a few times a day. Sometimes it's updated at the beginning of the year. It was more of, 3 times a week. And so right now, with numbers being what they are, I'm updating the dashboard. That's one of my responsibilities multiple times a day. And so if you were watching it today, you would have seen changes. But what's interesting to me is that we've had the data dashboard live for about a year. And so I'm able to look at historical data going back and just, thinking about our students and thinking about our students that have been out of the buildings. And so the first week back from our winter break, we had 237 positive student cases and 282 quarantine students. To think about what our numbers were, and I know that we didn't have the information that we have now, and I know that it just takes COVID to hit the wrong child or the wrong adult for very, that could cause up to death. And so fortunately we haven't had that happen with students and staff in our district, but to see that we had 237 students test positive the first week back after winter break, and thinking about how long we've kept our kids out of school and how that has impacted their learning and their social development and their behavior and their need just for connectedness. And so I'm just fearful that some of our students won't recover. And so I think ISB is also promoting that message that our kids need to be in school and that we need to keep our schools open as long as we possibly can. So the numbers are starting to come down, thank goodness. The second week back, so the week of the 10th, this would have been last week, we dropped from 237 positive student cases to 113 positive student cases, which I know is still high, something that would have put us into great panic a year ago. Today, and these would have been cases that were reported to us yesterday and today, because we take reports all weekend. We're at 28 active students and 46 students are quarantined. So that's where we are. We hope that the numbers will continue to go down. I encourage our families, our board members, our staff members to look and see what other school districts are doing in terms of surveillance testing, in terms of partnerships with the University of Illinois, just to see really how much more the Urbana School District is offering students, families, and staff. So that's the update on the dashboard, and I'm happy to answer any questions that pertain to that.
Okay. Next, Randy, I don't know if you want to head up these next couple slides are about ventilation. So we have received questions regarding our filtration and ventilation systems, and all the information that we're going to share right now is not new. I mean, we shared this once before, so we're kind of reiterating information and what we've been doing in regard to ventilation. So.
Okay. The filters in the ventilation system are being changed more often. We're using the best possible filters that we can use in our systems. We've increased the outside airflow to all our facilities as much as possible by using our HVAC systems. Right now we're having some schools that are having some issues with the amount of heat we're able to give them. It's because the airflow is so high, so we're having to increase their heat. In case you get those complaints, that's what that's about. In the classrooms, if they have windows, we make sure that they are able to open. And every classroom that has a window is able to do so. Rooms that have children in them and no additional ventilation, we've installed air purifiers, just the ones that plug into the walls. Large space air purifiers have been placed in the hallways of our high traffic areas, like for morning drop off and afternoon pickup, lunchrooms, stuff like that. We've installed the Iwave Air Purifiers in all the buildings. These devices are designed to kill the COVID. Iwave is a air purifying device that is installed in any air conditioner or heating system. When air passes over the Iwave, ions produced by the device reduce pathogens, allergens, particles, smokes, and odors in the air, creating a healthy environment without producing any harmful byproducts. Iwave uses a needle point bipolarization to create equal amounts of positive and negative ions. When these ions are injected into the airstream and breathable space, they break down passing pollutants and gases into harmless compounds like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water vapor. When the ions come in contact with viruses, bacteria, or mold, their reaction decomposes the surface proteins of these pathogens, thereby inhibiting their activity. The ions also attach to allergens like pollen and other particles like dust and dander, causing them to band together until they are large enough to be caught by our ventilation system.
Any questions for Randy about ventilation? So again, I know we've taken some questions via email, so Catherine will be putting this PowerPoint up with the board update. So if we get additional questions, or if you get additional questions, you can direct them to this, because we'll make sure it's a part of the documents that are shared with the public. So as we kind of close out all of that, I know it was a lot of information. I think just the big point is, you know, we are a masking district, and I think, I can't get to the next slide, John, for some reason. Thank you. And one of the messages I know at our middle school and high school, which are two of the buildings that I would say we are really doing our very, very best to make sure that our students are masking. That has been a big message from administration. Principal Nance did a virtual assembly Friday before last, and the focus was masking and really talking to the students at the high school about how important a mask is, not just for themselves, but for their friends, for their family members. We've been doing the same thing at the middle school. our pre-K students, I know I've had a conversation with the principal at early childhood, knowing that it is some of our pre-K students struggle with keeping their masks on. And so we're aware of that, and we know that if those students come back from the shortened quarantine, they may not be able to mask for 5 additional days like they should. So those are all things that we're aware of. We're having those conversations with families. I do ask families again, have those conversations with your children about how important mask wearing is, not just for them, but for you, for their friends. And don't be upset when our nurses or our principals call you and say, hey, your kid is not a good mask wearer, so they're going to have to stay home. So that is going to happen. It has already happened. But I really just want to stress to our families to work with us and understand we're not trying to keep your student out of school. We're just trying to keep everybody else safe as well. So my last point is please, please, please update your contact information if you have not done so recently, if you've had any changes in your emails or phone numbers. We're sending out a lot of communication these days, whether it's COVID related, whether it's bus related, whether it is, if we have to do any remote learning or adaptive pausing. And the only way we can get that information to our families in a timely way is to contact you with the information you've provided to us. So I would ask everybody, think about if you've had any changes, now is a good time to update your info. Check the website. Catherine does a great job of putting really important messages at the front of the website, so you don't have to go digging deep. You can see everything you need right at as soon as you arrive into our site. And definitely follow us on social media. So there are a lot of updates on Facebook and Twitter, not just about all the positive, wonderful things that are happening in our schools, because we do a good job of celebrating and sharing school happenings and news, but also for our COVID-19 updates. So any additional questions?
Board members, student ambassadors, any comments or questions?
Amy,
I have a
anything
question.
else? Oh, go ahead, Ravi.
Are the high school and middle school students given the option between the shield testing and the Binax now? And I asked that because there's about 2,000 of them, and the highest on the dashboard for shield testing is like 186 in a week.
Good point,
And
Ravi.
the average is probably 100. So it was very low at testing out of 2,000 people.
Yeah, really good point. We have talked about that, and it is not that they're given an option. We are using Shield at both places. The problem is participation. So we have done everything we can to get more participation. We've incentivized, we've given away prizes and done drawings and raffles, everything we can to get the students to go and participate in the Shield. John, it looks like you wanted to add something.
Yeah, and anecdotally, they do have, in the specific instance of student athletes, they have the option to do Binax or Shield testing. The participation has not been terribly higher or lower for either one. It is pretty low for both the Shield and Binax testing for high school student athletes.
We did have a meeting at the high school last week, and we talked about a couple of ideas that we're going to try to increase participation in Shield. But you're right, that is something we've noticed and we've discussed, is how can we get more of the middle school and high school students participating in it.
And one other thing is, there were some comments made about how younger kids may not be able to spit in the tube for the shield testing very well, or it might take more time. I just would comment that if you take the time now to potentially show them, if in the future, because now if the entire state is requiring test to stay, then the state's resources of Binax Now tests will all be coming to Urbana. They'll be spread out amongst the state. So we might have more frequent times where we don't have as many tests as we'd like. So if you could show them how to do it, I could tell you my third grader builds up his spit in line and just one-shots it, fills up the whole thing, and we're done, and our kindergartner can do the same now too. So, it doesn't take that long to do it. If they know how to do it, you just have to show them.
Thank you, Rob.
So, that could be a thing to pivot to in the future if you don't have the test. Instead of just canceling all asymptomatic tests for a week, You'd be like, hey, do you want the tube?
I agree, Robbie. It's definitely been on my mind. I think hopefully once we make it through the next week or two, we can start pivoting that way because I think it's a great idea and a great resource. So I agree with you.
Any more comments or questions?
Amy, anything else you want to add about anything? I know I did most of the talking.
No, I was thinking with the shield, the one thing is I wish we could get the results sooner because I've had to make some 6 a.m. phone calls and it's never fun. So if parents can be mindful, you know, I know it's an early phone call, but we're trying to keep the positive students out of school. So that will be one thing that we'll have to think about when we do, if we do up the shield testing, is those early morning calls are never fun. So we've got to figure out how we can make that work also for our families. And thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Amy.
Okay, thank you all. Our second administrative report tonight is the Illinois Educator Shortage Study.
Okay, so Angie and I are going to tag team this one. So this basically here, let me get on the, it's hard for me to see over there. So the Illinois Educator Shortage Survey, basically IARSS. So this is a consortium group, the Illinois Association of Regional Superintendents of Schools. So basically all of the regional offices of education across the state it is the group that makes up the IARSS. And so this is kind of hot off the press info that I'm sharing with you today. It isn't public yet. It will be released this week. And at my regional office of education meeting last week, they shared a lot of this data with us. And I brought it back and shared it with Angie. And we've been talking about it on our team because it's really relevant to a lot of the conversations that we've been having in the district about substitutes, about teacher shortages. So it's very timely, but also a good opportunity to update the board a little bit about what we've been doing since we increased our pay for subs and the sub survey that we've talked about here a little bit. So so it was kind of good timing that this data was just released. So the Illinois Educator Shortage Survey, they've been collecting this data since 2017, and it is a partnership between the state, all of our ROEs. 5 years after the initial IARSS report came out, one clear finding is that the Illinois teacher shortage is real. It is very complex and troubling in a lot of ways, and seems to be growing. So you'll see that from the data that Angie and I are going to talk through with you a little bit. So I'm only going to talk a little bit here at the beginning. I just wanted to share, you know, who this group is and how this data is collected. So some of the big data points from 2021 is, you know, that we have over 900 school districts in the state of Illinois. So this data basically is about 80% of our state is represented in these numbers, which is pretty good. For Central Illinois, our East Central Illinois area, 100% of our school districts participated in the study, is what we were told by the ROE, which means all of our districts around us in the Illini region and in ROE 9 participated, and their data is reflected here, which I think is important. So 88% of the schools say there is a teacher shortage problem. We know that. That is real for us, so we're experiencing it on a day-to-day basis. But the fact that 88% of the rest of the state see that as well is pretty significant. 77% report the shortage is getting worse. So again, they have historically been collecting this data since 2017, so they've kind of seen this trend in the last few years. 86% of our schools say they're seeing fewer applicants for the same positions from 5 years ago. we are seeing that as well. 93% expect an ongoing teacher shortage in the 2023 and the 2024 school years. So that is pretty alarming to us that we still have 2 more years to deal with this. Hopefully, we'll eventually get on the other side of it, but that is where we are right now. So I know this map is a little hard to see, but the point I wanted to share here was, and let me look at my board members, you have paper copies, so you can look at this map. But I wanted you to see East Central Illinois is the second bullet there under most severe shortages. So West Central Illinois is 95%, but our area, East Central Illinois, we're number 2 in the state for most severe shortages at 91%. So that is pretty important data point, I felt like. Some of the things that are negatively impacting recruitment. So on the side of the slide, it shows the number 1 reason schools are reporting educator vacancies is retirement. People are leaving the profession in droves, and not just teachers, but TAs, support staff, administrators, and of course that is because of COVID. Teacher resignation is the second most often. If you look at our board personnel report today, Paul pointed it out at the beginning, for this to be January, the number of resignations that we're seeing that looks like a May personnel docket there, to see that number of resignations. But it is just the burnout that people are experiencing. And we just talked about it, right? Like all the back and forth pendulum of all the guidance changing. It's a lot for our administrators and our teachers to deal with on a daily basis. After teacher resignation, medical leave, promotion, and termination are the other reasons why people are really leaving the profession. If you look at the negative impacts to recruitment, 52% say geographic location, 40% salary and benefits, 33% pension, 18% community atmosphere, 18% school and district resources, and then surprisingly, and this is a good, that only 6% are saying it's because of working conditions. And when I say working conditions, I mean not COVID-related working conditions. Sure.
Real quick, are these reported by the district superintendents of each of these?
These are reported by the HR departments of the districts.
So
So
this is-
I get an email
Okay.
from the state that says, hey, we need you to complete the educator shortage survey, and then I share that with HR. So the HR departments from every school district that completed the survey shared the information.
Okay, so this is perception of what you're seeing in central office. Because at first I thought we were talking about teachers are reporting these kinds of things.
No,
but this is your.
And it isn't perception. We give them real data. So the survey says, how many unfilled positions did you have this year? How many positions that were unfilled were filled by long-term subs? How many of those positions that were open this year were open also last year? So they ask us really specific numeric data point questions. So, yep. And those were the areas that I really wanted to highlight, and then Angie's going to dig a little bit deeper into the survey itself, but also give you some USD 116 info to go along with it.
So if you talk to teachers or administrators, or actually any staff members in buildings, right now the substitute shortage is at a crisis level. Thank goodness we have staff members that are willing to cover classes for their colleagues while they're being paid. That's not enough. The fatigue and the burnout that teachers are experiencing is real, and I think that's why we are seeing resignations. We've had teachers resign to leave the profession this year early on, teachers leaving to go to more appealing districts that are paying more. It's all over. So a lot of my time is spent trying to recruit and retain substitute teachers. We have interviews every week. We're actively working with Catherine and other media outlets in Champaign-Urbana to advertise. So right now, I'm not surprised by the data. It just confirms what we've been feeling, that 96% of schools report a shortage of subs, with 55% saying it's a serious problem. 90% of schools say substitute teacher availability is worse than 5 years ago. And 95% of schools expect the substitute teacher shortage to be a problem in 2023 and 2024. And 80% reported using existing teachers to fill shortages during their prep time. I know that some districts are telling their teachers that they have to sub during their prep time. We are not doing that. We are asking, begging with daily emails, asking for coverage, for help. A lot of our building administrators are also covering classrooms, which people are not complaining, at least not complaining to me, but you can tell that they're exhausted. Okay. Next slide. So in the fall, when we first started talking about this, I think that it was at a round table with UEA and board and district administration, and we talked about what can we do? What can we, we need to find it. We need to hear from the subs as to why they aren't picking up the positions in our district. And so we created a substitute survey. This was prior to the rate being raised for our substitutes. And this was sent out to everybody that's on our sub listserv. And currently we just ran a report today just to make sure that we had the most accurate number. We have 63 everyday subs. So these are people that are not in long-term sub-assignments. So long-term sub-assignments are filling either vacancies, maternity leave, FMLA leave, that type of thing. And then we have building-based subs, where each school has at least one building-based substitute teacher that is guaranteed full-time work that will find something for them every day. And then we have 2 district-wide subs where they're guaranteed work every day in the district, but they could go somewhere different every day, depending on the need. And then we have the 63 everyday subs. With COVID, it has definitely brought to light the sub shortage as well. And so we wanted to find out what people said. And so the results were not surprising, but it was good to have that data. And so first we wanted to know about how many times they had subbed this year, just based on the people that have filled it out. We wanted the feedback to be completely anonymous, so that if people could share their truth and be as brutally honest as they wanted to be. And so I don't know who wrote what, because I'm not that tech savvy to figure it out. So anyways, nobody had to insert their name. But down here, some of the things that are going to be most important to note, that are going to be hard to see on the slide, but I sent this to you board members electronically as well, to kind of, we had a scale to see what was causing subs not to sub. And it was strongly disagree, neutral, agree, or strongly agree. So we have like kind of a 5-point scale, and it's in color. I don't know if those of you at home can see that, or here, but COVID doesn't seem to be a big reason. I mean, we have a couple of anecdotal things that subs have written that they specifically aren't subbing because of that, but there's not an overwhelming sense of that. Student behavior isn't as much either. Not as high as I thought that it might be, just because we've seen not just the amount of students like in trauma and responding in kind of a negative way. I thought that we'd see more, but the majority of things that we're seeing is that people that are subbing, that this is something that they are not doing full time, that they are only wanting to work occasionally. The pay, it wasn't overwhelmingly that people didn't say it was too low, but it is, they have stated that it is too low, and the lack of health insurance, which we anticipated, also other obligations, and for these reasons as to why they're not subbing. And so I didn't share on the slides just because there were too many anecdotal things to note, but I did want to mention a couple that stood out to me that I circled in mine. But board members, you have copies of everything, so you can see what everyone wrote. But some of the things that I think are important to note are, I'll just read what people had said. In order to recruit and retain stable and qualified people for Urbana School District 116, We need to hire more full-time substitutes that are paid around $40,000 per year with competitive health insurance and benefits and retirement contributions. On a personal note, I agree. People are talking about relaxing the degree requirements, providing a path for licensure, other health and benefits. Regarding the degree requirements, that is something that our hands are tied and we can't control with ISB on who can be a substitute and who cannot. I do think that the state will shift based on the joint annual conference, and I know, Tori, that you were also in the room that talked about teacher shortages and substitute shortages came up, and we were problem solving different, giving suggestions to representatives on things that they could do to help with the sub shortage, which include different pathways for licensure or lessening the licensure requirements. Couple people really talked about needing health insurance to work. I can't imagine not having a job without health insurance. People need that. That's a basic human need. The pay also is something that we need to discuss, but not only the pay for our substitute teachers, the pay for all of our staff. Last time, during contract negotiations and moving forward, our teachers, not only in our state but in the nation, are underpaid. The profession at whole is undervalued. Teachers are teaching others to go into every profession, and they are not compensated appropriately to do so. And so I do think that we need to, I know that there's only so much money in the pot, right? But we need to pay them as much as we possibly can. One, to recruit and retain the most qualified candidates, and two, to help do our small part in the teacher shortage. So those were kind of the things. Again, benefits, talking about sick time, personal time, insurance, retirement contributions, and also somebody mentioned better training. And that is the case. So substitute teachers, if they, just have a regular certificate, they have a bachelor's degree, and it's not necessarily a bachelor's degree in education. If it was in education, they'd probably be teaching. They wouldn't be subbing, and because the cost of the pay is so much different. And so for people that have a bachelor's degree, they have very little training in how to work with students in a classroom. And so that is something that is needed to retain the substitutes that we do have. So with that survey data, I'll go back to my other screen, sorry. We also wanted to give you some data on the amount of subs that have started new with us after we raised the rates. I anticipated that might be a question. And unfortunately, you never know if they started with us because the rate raised, if because they just had applied for a job. And so that would take kind of an interview with those particular subs. But since we had raised the rates and then immediately afterwards other districts raised it, it's kind of like who can bid higher. But we had 15 new everyday subs start working since that pay rate was raised that had not worked at the beginning of the school year. And so it might have had an impact, but it wasn't something that blew us away, because we do have subs that kind of come and go during the school year as their schedule allows. So that was the data on that. In addition to the teacher shortage and substitute teacher shortage, we also have an administrator shortage. Right now it's not at a crisis level, but how this can impact a building is that we're not having the applicant pool that we used to for administrative positions, where right now we don't have any vacancies, but one of the most successful data points in school student achievement is the leader of that building. And right now, we have strong administrators, but when there are openings, we're not seeing, we might see between 3 and 5 people applying for the positions, where in past years it was highly competitive for those positions. So 64% of the superintendents that respond to the survey report little to no administrator shortage problem, but 95% report seeing fewer administrator applicants, which I would agree with. And so just to have some little anecdotal data from our district is that we have, and this is taking away our current administrators. So any administrator that has the principal certification is not included in this data. We have 38 staff members in our district that have a Type 75 license, meaning that they could be a principal of a school. And out of those 38, 2 are actively looking for administrative positions that we know of that have applied in our district. There are 2 people on this list who have been building, actually 3 people on this list who have been building level administrators and are choosing to work as teachers. And so the data for that kind of goes into the idea that I think that some people that might not have all of the knowledge of what's happening inside buildings might think that administrators have somewhat easier jobs than teachers. And maybe in some ways that's true, but it's not something that people are lining up the door for either, for the administrative positions, because of just the burnout, the stress load, the responsibility, the worrying about all of the different aspects that go into running a school. And so I also wanted to say in the findings too, and this is a good way for me to insert, we had a couple of public comments, and we also had a letter to the editor, and I wanted to clarify some of that. So the EIS report is something that's required for all school districts to complete annually, and it needs to be, and you submit it to ISB, and they post it on the Illinois report card. And our data for that report has been wrong for a minimum of 5 years. That's is what Illinois report card, we have all the things, all the reports that they have posted. We have verified that data, and all 5 reports are wrong. So we're also going to look back to see what the data was that was submitted prior to that. It's going to take some time. We have been working on this since the fall. It wasn't an emergency situation for us because we knew that with ISB that we could not correct that information for the Illinois report card until August of 2022. And so with other substitute shortages, teacher shortages, recruitment and retention, COVID, it's been a work in progress, but it hasn't been at the top of the list. The letters to for public comment and the letter, kind of circulating in neighborhoods, made it a very high priority in my work area because I wanted to clear that up right away. And so I want to take responsibility for those reports not being accurate. The presets that were being pulled for Skyward and into ISB were not set up correctly and haven't been set up correctly again for a minimum of 5 years. And so that report has been corrected for the school year of 2021. It is updated on our website. There is an asterisk on our website that states that the other 4 years will be corrected and that they can't be corrected on the report card until August of 2022, but they will be corrected on our website. And board members, I have emailed those to you. And so now that data will be available to public members to take with it what they will, I will also note that our district does not pay the TRS contribution for teachers, administrators that pay into TRS. So for example, and I said this on Monday's board meeting last week, but that wasn't, at a real prime time that I don't think people might have been listening, no offense. But if an administrator or a teacher, because we have teachers that make nice salaries too, let's say that somebody's making a listed salary of $100,000. 9% of that, so $9,000, is listed in their salary because it is paid to them, but then it is also taken out from them to pay directly to their TRS retirement. That is an Urbana thing. I did FOIA the Illinois State Board of Education because I would like to know how many districts pay their TRS for their staff members and how many don't, and a list of those school districts so that we have that data. I also FOIA'd the following school districts. So I'm probably not making some friends right now, but in order to compare apples to apples for an administrative salary study, you cannot rely on Illinois report card data. Case in point, our data. And so Champaign Unit 4, Rantoul, Danville, Bloomington, Normal, and Decatur have all been FOIA'd for their salary, their compensation reports for administrators so that we can present that to the board. And so what's important to know is in their base salary, whether or not it includes the TRS contribution or not, whether or not the district pays for that or not, so that we can break it down to see really how we compare to other school districts. And so I'm happy to do that because I want to address any concerns or, just anything. I mean, that's people need to know what we're doing and how we're spending our money. And so that's not a problem. I will tell you that moving to recommendations, and so on the last side, the superintendents talked about policy recommendations, talked about investing more in growing your own, and investing more in the MTI, which is for minority teacher recruitment for teachers of color. And so those are all things that we need to be doing as well. To kind of give you an example of where we need to step up, in my opinion, my budget to assist staff members with tuition or with books or with certification tests for maybe like if somebody wanted to be an administrator in our district or something and they're applying, my annual budget for that is $7,500 for our school district. That is not enough money. We have a separate pile with Mrs. Norton for tuition waivers to the University of Illinois. We're very fortunate that we're in a community where we have a partnership with them. But for teaching assistants or for other staff members that we know would be very strong educators, we want to be able to invest in them and grow them in our schools so that they'll stay in our schools. And that $7,500 is not enough. One of the other options that we are exploring, I've had 3 different meetings, conferences, and in-person meetings with a company that outsources substitute teachers. And it's something that I would have never thought existed, but thinking about the essential functions of schools and how we outsource for bus service, we outsource for custodial work, we outsource for food service. Substitute teachers are an essential part of a school district and are becoming more so with the teacher shortage. And right now I'm spending more of my time, and human resources staff members are spending more of our time recruiting and retaining and interviewing and, possibly disciplining substitute teachers, because that's all happening due to potentially lack of training or whatever. And that time really would be better spent recruiting and retaining the current staff members that we have, or the potential staff members for the vacancies that we have. And so to have a different company able to do that type of work would be really helpful. Also, trying to find a company, I think we need to provide benefits and we need to provide different perks to make it an attractive full-time position. Something else that I talked about with the budget was the early pathways into teacher education. We have some rock star substitutes. We have some rock star teaching assistants, SEAs throughout the district. And I, can think immediately on my hand, this potential teachers of color in our district that do not have the funds to put themselves through school and make just enough money that they aren't going to qualify for a full ride, and that we would love to have them. And so those are things that we're going to have to do, to think creatively, to make sure that we have the best in front of our kids. So that's kind of where we are. Once we are putting together numbers, if we think that outsourcing subs is a good suggestion, then we'll be talking to another company that also does that type of thing. I know of 2 companies, and if we see that these are even potential things that we consider, that will be brought forward to the board to discuss as a potential option. But again, I think that the background noise that's going on, and it's not even noise, you just see it on people's faces, that people are tired subbing during their prep periods, during their lunch, during their collaboration, while they're being compensated financially. It's draining on their mental health, their physical health, their family, and so on. And we don't want people to leave the district. So happy to answer any questions. So
I was going to
yes.
point out this last bullet, I think also is representative of the high school program.
Oh, yes.
the
Yes.
early pathway in the teacher education. Mrs. Norton, I know, works
Mhm.
with the, which group is it? The Parkland group. Yes.
Mhm.
We have the education pathway group that Mrs. Uscali is leading. We've also been working with Parkland as well, and Education for Employment. And so we have a partnership with Eastern Illinois University and with Parkland as well.
Thank you. And I think you skipped this slide, Angie. The only, I did want to point out that
Yes.
that first one at the top about the increase in the number of paraprofessionals. That isn't because we've had TAs like beating down our doors to
Right.
come and work at our district. It is primarily pandemic and COVID related. Like we've hired a significant number of, like all of our COVID testers and all of these additional positions that we put in, nurse helpers and other additional positions. So it might look like we've increased. It is really more so response to the pandemic. That is the increase in some of those positions. This second one is something that we talk about often at our ROE meetings, our regional office meetings, that we have a significant number of teachers who are leaving the state of Illinois and going to other states to get licensed because Illinois is, for something, just not making it easy for people, unfortunately. So that 33% is a real statistic. We also have some colleges that have figured it out, like Grand Canyon University and some places like that that are offering these virtual teacher licensing options, and some, bringing the teacher licensure program to districts because Illinois just isn't. We're just not we're not in the front. We're not being trendsetters in this area, and there are other districts like Indiana and Ohio and places that are. So those two I just wanted to highlight. Angie, I don't know if you want to say
Yeah,
anything
no,
else.
I don't know how I skipped this slide. I guess I don't have my glasses on.
The options, the good
Yeah, no, I mean, also on this, this was kind of interesting, also and timely, that 32% reported salary and benefits packages negatively impact their ability to recruit administrators. And I think that does speak in our data, just within the district, that we have 38 people with their Type 75 that are not applying for the vacancies that we have, because it's not worth it to them. And so, we see superintendents who are retiring early. We see administrators that are speaking their intentions of what they would like to do moving forward, because it's a hard job. So. I think that's it, because I skipped to the last, right?
Yep, you
Yep.
did the last
Sorry
one.
about that.
No, right.
All right.
Right. The board members are ambassadors. Any questions?
Just a comment and a clarifying question. So first, thank you, Angie, for your willingness to pull all these data. Given that they've been wrong for 5 years, I think we can do the math and realize you haven't been in that position for 5 years. So this is a long-term thing that has to be cleaned up. So I personally appreciate you looking into it. I just wanted to clarify, the 9% is true of all teachers and administrators. So all the base salaries that are going to be in this sheet are included. They're 9% higher
than what they're taking home.
Exactly. For
Correct.
teachers, administrators, everybody.
Correct.
Okay.
And so what the sheet doesn't have, and it's not required by EIS, and I didn't want to provide this information publicly, is that it does not require stipends for teachers, which is in some cases a really hefty part of their salary. That is not recorded on the EIS report because stipends are optional. So some teachers get a stipend just for the type of teaching that they do. Different music teachers that have things at night. I can say that because I was a former music teacher, but some of the stipends are between $10,000 and $15,000, which is a significant game changer, but not everybody has them and not everybody wants them. But we often have vacancies for our extracurriculars, for our stipend positions, and based on the time that it requires to do it justice, to do a great job, that We don't have a line of people out for those either, so. But I just wanted to note that, so thanks for bringing that up.
Anyone else?
I guess one more thing. So I will say, this is just to piggyback. So like when you look at the EIS report on Champaign Unit 4's website, so their base salaries are their base salaries, because in the other, on the EIS report, in the far right, it says retirement contribution. If you see on our report, it says $0 all the way down. On their report, that's where it's the board paid TRS, and so their base salary is their base salary. And so it's not increased 9%. So if you look at Champaign Unit 4's and compared it to ours, you need to do some math before you are able to make a comparison. So.
Well, thank you very much.
I just had one quick question, or not really question, just comment, whatever. It's timely that we talk about this. The News Gazette just had an article that it was today. It could have been in print yesterday. I'm not sure, but from a survey of Capital News Illinois talking about this very subject, and they had suggested that ISB, towards the end of the article, I'm just reviewing it again, that they're developing grant applications to develop teacher residency programs. And without getting anybody in trouble, is there any way we can hold any of the local university higher education places we've got here to hold their feet to the fire to try and take advantage of that with so many, I mean, the two that were here, Parkland and U of I, and I'm thinking of Normal as well with a huge teacher training program. What do you know? Can you find out if they're doing anything to grow more teachers?
I can talk a little bit to that. So I have a personal and professional relationship with Charles Lorenas at Parkland College, and he and I spoke last week. We Zoomed, and we want to set up a meeting as well. And I've talked to Dr. Henderson over at Eastern. The professor, since I am also a student, I've talked to education professionals, professors at U of I as well. And what I would like to see is that, and I don't know, it's just that, things are always a little bit harder at U of I than what I think they should be. And I don't know why, but I don't work there. So for professors to require their students in education programs, I would love to be able to see like a semester-long commitment as, so many hours working in our schools. I mean, they could work as teaching assistants. They have enough college credit hours. If they don't, they can take the Work Keys test, which if they have passed they won't have a problem passing that. And to be able to, they could be paid. And so it's kind of like a paid internship. We always need teaching assistants. They wouldn't be alone with students in the classroom. And so it wouldn't be like a subbing thing before they had their bachelor's degree, but that also it would give them hands-on experience working with students. And so I don't know why this can't be explored, but I have talked to several professors about doing that. I don't know how to move that forward.
Well, and it's interesting because you said that very thing about getting paid. I know with, when kids fill out the FAFSA, which I know is a federal application, you can check the box that says, yes, I would like work-study opportunities, which I know is coming from the university, the higher ed program itself and not from districts like us. But boy, that money that we would provide to that would surely help towards tuition and but anyway, and also I just didn't know if this is something, if you've heard anything down the pike about what our legislators are having to say about this, because again, this article mentioned about, the General Assembly trying to vote on increasing the teacher retirement fund so that it's fully funded and things like that. And I just don't know if you guys had heard anything from all of your meetings, what our legislators are saying about it.
What's really hard and not necessarily attractive for brand new teachers, right? Right now I'm 44. I started teaching when I was 22. I can retire when I'm 55. If somebody going like a first-year teacher right now, they can't get full benefits like I am able to get in 11 years. They can't get that until they're 67. And so it's huge. And I'm not saying our district, but I'm saying if our society and our state doesn't start doing something to really pump it up, the profession, I don't know. I don't see lots of people saying, hey, you should really go into education and you should really be a teacher, because of lots of different things. And I think that it would be great if Urbana could be the trendsetter and say, I mean, I know it's hard because we can't compete with our neighbors sometimes, but to say, this is the value we place on it, and this is what we want to spend our money on, and that's what we want to do. I just don't, I mean, but I don't do the budget, so, and I don't know how to, there's only so much money, so.
So, Ann, and I'm looking at Kim because she was in that meeting with me about 2 weeks ago. We had a very similar conversation in the dual language planning committee meeting. We had a couple parents there who brought this up. You know, we were basically more so talking about our teacher recruitment for dual language, and the number of teachers that we've lost in the dual language program and what we need to do. That's one of our priorities for this committee, is to really investigate how we're going to keep the teachers we have and then recruit other really highly qualified dual language teachers to Urbana. One of the comments that a couple of our teachers who are, so we have parents and teachers as part of this group, teachers also expressed concern that they're not getting student teachers in their dual language classrooms. And what we found out as we started talking about this within the group is that many of our, and this is more so a U of I concern, but I'm going to share positive related to it at the end. So the concern was that U of I student teachers they're being placed, they want to become dual language teachers, but all of their experiences they're not being selectively placed in dual language classrooms. And they're being given other experiences. So there was a U of I professor who is from the C&I department who is part of our committee. She's one of our parents. And she was listening and taking notes and writing down all the things that the teachers were saying. She reached out to us like a day or two later. She took that back to the C&I department at the U of I, and they said that they are going to make a more concerted effort to make sure teachers who want to be dual language educators are in our, actually in dual language classrooms in our district and other places. They're getting these monolingual experiences when they should be getting dual language experiences, especially our bilingual teachers. And, a lot of them are going back to the suburbs, because they want to go home, but really making an effort as a college to give those students those experiences here, because then once they're here, then we can do everything we can to say, hey, Urbana is a great place to be. Don't you want to stay here? But if they never get placed in any of our classrooms, then we lose that opportunity right away. So it was great for her to be part of that conversation and for her to take action and go right back to the college and say, this is something we need to do better. And they responded and sent us an email and said that next year they're going to try to do a better job of some of their placements. So that was great. That's encouraging. Yeah, it was encouraging.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more comments or questions? One last call. All right, hearing none. 11.0 contains our consent agenda. 11.1 is the minutes for the December 14th business meeting, January 3rd special meeting, January 4th study session, January 6th Equity Task Force Committee meeting canceled, January 10th special meeting. Our November bills and checks for advance approval was on December 14th business meeting, but the education fund for $1.5 million, operation and maintenance fund bills to the tune of $190,000, bond and interest fund bills for $147,000, transportation fund bills for $328,000, working cash bonds for $672,000, tort for $25,203, life safety levy $1,220, payroll, salary, and benefits for $4.6 million, Urbana adult education for $100,683. December bills and checks, ed fund bills for $1.752 million, operation and maintenance fund bills for $164,000, bond and interest fund bills for $4.5 million, transportation fund bills for $31,100, working cash bonds $166,000, tort expenses for $44,424. Payroll, salary, and benefits, 4.5 million. Urbana adult education, $10,500. 11.3 were the long list of personnel items for January. 11.4 is administrative personnel items. I'd like to, Angie and Carol, I guess, discuss that issue.
All right. So we do have an administrative recommendation since Carol Baker has really said she's leaving. So early this school year, Chief Financial Officer Carol Baker announced her retirement date of March 31st, 2022. This allowed the Urbana School District to post for the CFO position early and nationwide to attract the most qualified and talented applicants. 5 applicants from in and out of state were extended a Level 1 interview. On Monday, December 13th, the Level 1 interview committee, made up of UEA leadership, certified and non-certified staff, administrators, and central office staff, interviewed the 5 applicants selected. Out of the 5 applicants interviewed, the Level 1 committee recommended that 2 applicants move on to the Level 2 interviews with the district administrative team. On Friday, December 17th, members of the district administrative team interviewed both candidates for an hour. Both Level 1 and Level 2 interview committees strongly recommend Katie Rowland to be the new CFO for the Urbana schools following Carol's retirement from the district. Katie Rowland is an Urbana native and an Urbana schools alumnus. Katie is a graduate of the University of Illinois with a Master of Science in Recreation, Sport, and Tourism. As a proponent for lifelong learning, Katie continued her education, earning an accounting certificate from Parkland College in 2014 and achieving her Certified Public Accountant, CPA, designation in 2020. Since 2015, she has managed the critical financial and business functions of the Urbana Park District as business manager and superintendent of business services. In this role, Katie oversees the annual tax levy, coordinates the issuance of bonds, prepares the annual budget, and received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the annual audit for each year she administered. Katie also serves as the treasurer of the Environmental Education Association of Illinois, a statewide network of formal and non-formal environmental educators. Her skills in local government accounting will be an asset to Urbana School District 116. Katie is eager to continue her career in public service with the Urbana School District, and she looks forward to the ways her education, experience, talents, and enthusiasm will help Urbana continue to shine in our community. The district administrative team recommends to the Board of Education that Katie Rowland be officially approved and able to work alongside Carol Baker as her schedule allows this spring during the transition of the Chief Financial Officer positions. Urbana School District 116 administration has also proactively collaborated with the Urbana Park District's Executive Director, Tim Bartlett, to continue to meet their needs and requests during this transition process. So we are bringing forward Mrs. Katie Rowland for board approval. So not yet, Katie. They gotta vote for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Katie's like pretty excited. So you see. So.
Just every day.
All right, we do have 2 more items on our consent agenda.
Yes.
11.5 is a resolution authorizing the directing the sale or disposal of personal property in the district, and 11.6 is a new activity account for UMS Music Department to raise funds for chorus band and string students. Does anyone wish to have anything removed from the consent agenda to be voted on individually? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hasanadka?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hull?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes, congratulations, Katie. Welcome to our team.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
I look forward to serving the district, and I'm glad to be back at where I spent a lot of time in my childhood. So, yep, I went to Leal School and Urbana Middle School, and graduated from Urbana High School. So, go Tigers, and look forward to continue being a public servant of Urbana. So thank you for having me, and I can't wait to absorb all of Carol's knowledge. She and I have worked together on the Urbana Indoor Aquatic Center management team for the whole time that I've been in my position. So we already are friends and know each other, and I just look forward to getting to learn all the great things she does for the Urbana School District.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for sitting here tonight.
All right.
I'm used to it, I do that too, so. That's right.
12.1 are gifts. Urbana Early Childhood School Trust Account received an anonymous donation of $100. Stephanie Nevins donated $75 to go toward the UHS band room renovation project. Brendan Harley donated $1,000 to purchase COVID-19 mitigation and prevention efforts, for instance, but not exclusively for high filtration masks for all teachers, staff, and students, for box fans to improve ventilation, and for testing. Diane Gothel donated $50, and J.B. Tracy Malkovich donated $100 to Yankee Ridge Elementary Library in memoriam for Thomas Proctor. First Christian Church donated $188.65 to go towards supporting families in need at Wiley Elementary School. A local nonprofit organization called See You Able, Diane Gordon, donated 15,000 adult-sized reusable cotton masks to District 116. These masks were appropriate for students at UMS and UHS, as well as staff. The following donated to their Evelyn Burnett Underwood Instrumental Assistance Fund at UMS. Wendy Matheson's $30 and Micah Yeakley $250. Is there a motion to receive the gifts and to send thank yous?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes. 12.2 is our door detection system at Urbana High School, which was discussed at our last study session meeting. This is for the open gate door detection system from CEIA USA with a purchase price of $65,000. Is there any motion or further discussion?
I move towards the purchase. Second.
Any discussion?
I wanted, if that's all right, I just want to say one thing, and I intend to support the motion, but I would like to just publicly acknowledge that I do know there are people in the community who are speaking out against this, that there are people who are concerned about what it's going to say about our schools and all of these things. And I just encourage all those people to listen to the board discussion that we've had about this. It's, we have been thinking, we've been talking about it. The superintendent has been, she collected data from the schools. I encourage the administration to collect those data again so that we have a sense of the changes that are happening when, should those be, approved in this meeting tonight. Because I think we do owe it to those who are concerned to say something in a semester or two about, what the perception is among the students in the school.
Any further comments or questions from board members or ambassadors?
I do have a statement, but I'd like to see if the ambassadors, did you guys want to chime in at all first? Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a quick statement. I prepared so I wouldn't forget. Although we need to confront the increasing violence that's been occurring in our community so that it doesn't spill into our schools, we need to look at the whole picture to address how our students and staff are involved. We know that investing our district dollars in hiring qualified staff who can provide extra services is a benefit. Much research has shown that increasing clinical and professional staff helps reduce negative outcomes for our students, including induced violence. The data are clear and readily available to back this up. What we do not have is an abundance of data that proves that metal detectors reduce violence or help deal with trauma or improve social emotional learning outcomes in students. We also know that the base sticker price of metal detectors does not cover the entire costs involved. The unwritten costs include training staff to man the mechanisms, which in turn means we'll likely be asked to purchase more metal detectors for more school spaces as time goes on. In our last meeting, we were informed that police SROs were the best equipped personnel to handle such surveillance. While many people might feel that using the metal detector vote as a means to force a discussion of SRO placement is a spurious one, I would argue that we cannot pay for metal detectors without paying for SROs. I've repeatedly asked our administration for a means to assess the efficacy of maintaining police in our schools, yet the addition of metal detectors will all but guarantee that school district funded police officers will be a part of its long-term budgeting. I vote to spend our district's money on proven methods that treat the issues affecting the whole child to prevent school violence.
All right, any further comments or questions? Any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hall?
No.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes, motion passes. 12.3, Washington and Vine right-of-way dedication. Would it be Randy or would it be you?
It's me.
Oh, thanks, Carol.
Good evening. This right-of-way is just a formal cleanup by the city of Urbana. As you can see from the map that I provided in the board packet, it is along the corner of Washington and Vine, outside our fence line there. So it's just giving that property back over to the city, which doesn't do anything to it's to the benefit of us. They will actually maintain that property as well. So I recommend approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes. 12.4 is approval of travel expenses for the recent joint annual conference for, I guess, myself, Vice President Exum, Brenda, and Ann. Not sure what the exact amount was, but is there a motion to approve the travel expenses?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I just want to make a personal note that I found that several of the events I attended this conference be quite worthwhile in terms of professional development and for what we do here. So, so appreciate the opportunity. Roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes. 12.5 is the agreement for Housing Authority for Champion County and the district for a data sharing agreement. So this had been before us before.
Yes, and we made took the board's suggestions. Hopefully you noted those in the revised agreement, and everything that you wanted represented was included. So we'd like to request approval at this time.
Right. Is there a motion?
I move for approval.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'd like to make a comment. I just wanted to point out to the people who cannot see the agreement that, because one of the suggestions I had made was via email after the meeting, because situations like this, people have used anything they can, such as classroom attendance or grades, to deny housing. And so, although maybe the current housing authority may not do that, you don't know who's going to be in charge of it 5 years from now or whatever, you know. So there is a phrase in there that says, no data shared will ever be used to deny housing. So that is very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out, Robbie. It's very important.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
and President Pulaski.
Yes, 12.6 is a resolution abating the tax heretofore levied in the year 2021 to pay debt service. Ms. Carroll?
Yes, these last two resolutions are related to our alternative revenue source bonds that we sold to be paid with our sales tax revenues. So this is just, resolutions are just to certify to the county clerk that we do have those sales tax revenues on hand and they do not need to levy any tax, so it won't increase our tax rate. So this is an annual thing that we do every year for our alternative revenue bonds. We'll get this filed with the county by the end of February. So it won't impact our tax rate.
Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hassanatka?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski.
Yes, and 12.7 is basically the same resolution, but for a different series of bonds. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hassanatka?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski.
Yes, there is no call for future special or executive meetings at this time. Superintendent's report.
Okay, I think John has that up and ready. First, we just wanted to bring attention to free at-home COVID public opportunity for the public to access free COVID tests for your home. If you've been following, our government is not only are they providing additional tests to schools to maintain in-person learning, they're also providing free at-home COVID tests for the public. So we'll have this in the update tomorrow. So families can go in. If you just follow that link, it is very simple to request your test. You get 4 rapid tests, 1 order per address, and those tests will ship out at the end of January. So a great way to, for our families at home, if you're thinking that your child or someone in your home might have some symptoms, COVID-like symptoms, you can have these at your residence free of charge and don't have to pay for them. So that's something we'll share with the public. We also something that we have been talking about, Carol's been working with Arbor, is the large number of families. Angie read the data, so you've heard some of the numbers of our students that are quarantining at home. Well, those students would normally be getting breakfast and lunch in our buildings, but right now they're at home. So we wanted to make sure that we were providing those meals for families who wanted them. So we've created a system with Arbor where families can email, phone call. We've been sharing this information out the last couple weeks. To pick up, they just have to call, make arrangements for meal pickup. You go to the middle school and they'll have your breakfast and lunches available for any students that are quarantining in your home that can't have their meals at school. So thanks Arbor and Carol for working through those details. Some celebrations. So last night I went to, Sunday, to the Cranert celebration that is open every year to the public. It was a smaller group than normal due to the pandemic, but the people who were there enjoyed a great program. The keynote speaker was the nephew of Dr. King. Dr. King's older brother, his son, was the keynote speaker, so it was very enjoyable. And our very own Terry Napper once again led the choir. It was a small choir, but they were mighty in voice and excitement, so it was still a good evening. We have highlighted our scholarship recipients, but I'd like to also just show you that picture of them again, and that includes the students from Central and Centennial. Urbana was very well represented in that group, as you can see. We had 5 students and one of the alternates there, so great night for our young people, really proud of them. Another young person that we're really proud of is Will Aline from the high school. He's a senior. He received a National African American Recognition Award. Will is also a proud member of our decorated high school boys soccer team. So we're really proud of Will, and he's going to do great things in college. So that includes some of his honors and recognition. So I know there was a lot on social media, and a lot of people really enjoying that story over the weekend. So we're really proud of Will. We also wanted to highlight some of our music UHS students who participated in the ILMEA All-State Conference. This is a really selective conference. It isn't easy to get to this level. The students have to go through quite a few steps along the way. So Owen Robinson, senior there, in the honors orchestra, and of course my computer did just shut down, so now I can't read that name from this distance. Is it Isabel or Ibel Lee is a sophomore, and she plays the, thank you, plays the oboe. So congratulations to both of them. And then Erin Rosenstein, our junior, who's not pictured, also was a participant. So congratulations to all three of those students. January is National Mentoring Month. So we've been highlighting our mentors through different stories on social media and thanking them for still staying connected to their mentees, whether it is virtually, through text, phone calls, and some are actually coming in person. So we just want to thank our mentors for everything that they're doing and the time that they're spending with our young people. So also the mentoring breakfast we need to add is this Thursday, 7:30. It was going to be in person, but now it has shifted to virtual. So we'll be doing that to kind of recognize our mentors and having breakfast in front of our computers together. So this is the next couple of mentor training dates that are coming up on January 25th and February 20th. Dr. Levizo has been ill, but she's back in the building now, so we'll bring her back in front of the board and have you have an opportunity to get to know her a little bit better. She is the new mentoring coordinator who took over for Tom Howley, pretty new in her role, but really excited and doing great things already. Doing good in the U. So I am definitely going to have to look at my computer for this one. So working alongside with the City of Urbana, we want to recognize students and volunteers in our community who are we're starting a new program. It's a mayoral recognition program. The goal of this program is to support Urbana High School students and develop their skills to exercise their rights as public citizens and their responsibilities, just to give them a few more opportunities to do this outside of the school building. We also want to honor them and their meaningful contributions in the community. So we have a couple parents who've been working diligently on this. They came to us with the idea, and we're really excited about it. Then the idea grew to include Mayor Marlin and the City of Urbana. So we're starting this program, and I know Catherine is just starting to share it out, and of course doing this during the month of January when we celebrate the service and the life and work of Dr. King is really important. Students with 30 hours of service will receive a certificate of service from Urbana Mayor Marlin, myself, and Principal Nance. Students with 50 to 75 or 100 hours of service will also earn bronze, silver, and gold status, and also receive additional recognition. Students, there's an application form that you can fill out. Someone does have to verify your service hours, that the things that you're saying you're doing in the community are actually being done. And then we are going to be recognizing those service efforts as we receive those applications, and those students will be publicly recognized by the mayor in a ceremony in May. So starting this month, Doing Good in the U, we're kicking it off and looking forward to all the students who are going to not just do the great things they're doing at the high school, but take some of those fantastic things out into our community and share some of the good work in Urbana. And last but not least, our next out of school days, Friday, February 18th. is Winter Institute Day. We always look forward to that as a day when all kinds of classes and courses, we are missing being able to do that in person this year. We're again do that via Zoom. We had to do that last year. However, I still felt like we all walked away with great professional learning opportunities and opportunities to collaborate and learn from U of I professors, internal people, external people. So we'll share some of those upcoming classes. Board members are also always invited to attend Institute Day. Since it is virtual this year, it'll be a little bit easier for you to zoom into some of those sessions. So we'll make sure that you get the booklets. And then that same weekend is President's Day. And then we do have a couple FOIA requests that have been filled from, well, it's actually one, but for several items. Smart Procure purchase order numbers. If purchase orders are not used, a comparable substitute is acceptable. Purchase date, line item details, line item quantity, line item price, vendor ID number, name, address, contact person, and email addresses. And those have all been completed.
Thank you. Any board reports tonight? All right, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hasanadka?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski.
Yes, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.